So I'm very happy to be here. I just want to say a quick thank you again to Maggie Montemuro, to Stacy Francis of Francis Financial, and Lisa Ernst of Savvy Ladies, and for the rest of the team for having me here today. I'm really excited to share what I've learned along the way on my experiences with negotiating. We're going to talk about negotiation today, how to negotiate even if you hate confrontation. And I make that point because I think we have some ideas about who's good at it and who's not good at it, and we're going to debunk some of those myths today. And I hope to give you really actionable content today, things that you can really do starting today, starting tomorrow morning, to get you on your way. So let's dive right in. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So how to negotiate even if you hate confrontation. Just a quick check to make sure you know that you're in the right place. This may sound like you. If some of them sound like you, then you know you'll get some valuable strategies today. First of all, this webinar is for you if you feel nervous when it comes to speaking up for yourself financially. And I am definitely used to be in that camp, so I totally identify. This webinar will be helpful for you if you fall into one of two buckets. The first bucket is you don't really speak up for yourself often or ask for what you want. Or the second bucket is you do speak up and ask for what you want, but you tend to shut down after the first or second no. And I was kind of in that second camp for a while. You know, I knew enough to be asking for what I wanted, but then when I would ask and the other party would say no, I would just kind of skulk away and lick my wounds and not know what to do next. So this is going to help immensely if you're in either of these two camps. You tend to be on the agreeable side. You dislike or avoid confrontation, and again, that's a lot of us. So many women, you know, they tend to kind of go with the flow. You tend to put others' needs first, even in a professional setting when it comes to your finances. And maybe even at times you feel like you might be taken advantage of. And so what negotiation really is and learning how to negotiate properly is really about empowering yourself to assert yourself and your position and your interests in a way that helps you get what you need. So today, this will be really helpful for you if you want to learn the specific strategies for how you can negotiate better so that you can earn more, so that you can save more, and really, the most important, be more confident and also more assertive in those tense money situations. Those were definitely the areas that I had the most trouble with. You know, when things get tense, then what do you do next? So here's what we're going to cover today. The first thing we're going to cover is the 3 core traits of what I call nice negotiators. So you don't have to be heavy-handed, and you don't have to be strong-arming people and pushing your will on people to get what you need. There is a way to be, quote, nice, and also negotiate and advocate for yourself financially. So we're going to talk about the 3 core traits of nice negotiators. The next thing we're going to talk about is common myths about negotiation and just debunk them. You know, some of the thoughts and attitudes and beliefs we have about negotiation, and kind of turn them on their head a little bit so we can see it in a new light and from a new perspective. The next thing we're going to talk about is I'm going to give you a 5-step process for preparing for a negotiation. And I think when you tend to be, you know, a little bit on the agreeable side, if you're a little more on the nice or softer side, then preparation is going to be kind of your silver bullet here, your secret weapon to getting what you want. We never go into negotiations cold. We make sure that we are prepared for all the different ways that a conversation could go, and that gives you power and that gives you strength within the conversation to move it forward. A little mental trick to instantly help you think on your feet. One of the toughest parts about negotiation, especially if you're kind of an emotional type, and, you know, again, I am too, I'm very warm-hearted, and so I get easily emotionally frazzled if somebody, you know, the tone shifts or things get tense. And so I'm going to offer a trick that can help you think on your feet so you can gather your thoughts and move the conversation forward. And then lastly, I'm going to give you some strategies, these elegant ways to move past no's, plus a word-for-word phrase that kind of opens doors for you. And it's one of those mental tricks. It's a catch-up phrase that will help you get your bearings when the conversation starts to go off the rails and you need to move it back on track. So that's quickly what we're going to cover today. And then as a member of the Savvy Ladies community, I do have a gift for you at the end. It's a little bribe for you to stay till the end. And I have a free checklist. So we're going to go over a 5-step process to prepare you for your negotiation. And I've listed out this little worksheet. And I know it sounds silly, but anytime I go into a negotiation, I whip out my little worksheet and I do my homework beforehand, and I offer that to you, and I'll show you how you can get that at the end. So you can grab a copy of that. So quickly, a little bit about who I am and why I do this. This is me before kids, no bags under my eyes. I'm Jill Davi, and I was in a financial mess over a decade ago, $30,000 in debt. I was under-earning. I wasn't paying attention to my finances, and I knew I needed to change my behavior with money. And so I started putting a process together and a system together that helped me to turn my finances around. And I started sharing that with other people. And now I'm a professional coach, and I help people from all walks of life to really empower themselves with their finances. And negotiation is really a big part of that, really learning how to advocate for yourself and assert yourself financially. Sometimes that's the difference between getting the high-paying job or not, getting the deal on the house or not, and all these other little ways that we negotiate to get what we need in life. And I do this because I really see a need there. I really have a soft place for people, for women who, really need step-by-step strategies, not really theories, but what do I do next? How can I specifically turn my finances around? And in this case, how do I break down the negotiation process into bite-sized pieces that I can digest and use and implement so I can become better at negotiating, which I think is just such an important skill to learn. So that's a little bit about me. I live out in Mendham in New Jersey, and I have 2 children, so that's just me. Okay, so let's dive into the content. So 3 power traits of what I call nice negotiators. The first thing, this is something that I had to kind of reframe for myself over the years. Nice negotiators, they lead with their innate abilities to relate, to connect, and to show genuine empathy with the other party in order to move tough negotiations forward. I used to think that being nice was, or being agreeable or personable or friendly, I used to think that that would be a disadvantage. And actually, it's one of the best ways that you can move a negotiation forward in your favor by making that connection, by building almost a friendly-ish rapport with the other party. It opens up avenues that wouldn't be available to you if you're just strong-arming people, if you're rude, if you're pushy. So being nice and being friendly and agreeable can actually be a huge asset. So that's the first trait. They relate with people, and they use that empathy to move the conversation forward. Second, they prepare ahead of time to avoid their tendency towards emotional overwhelm. So again, if you find that your natural disposition is to be a little more agreeable, be a little bit nice, that's fine. That's okay. To counter that getting frazzled, we want to prepare diligently for anything and all things that could happen and could go wrong. And that preparation gives you the confidence and the strength to boldly push through the conversation. We never want to go into a negotiation cold. We never want to go in without the information. We never want to go in too hot-headed either. We want to be fully prepared so that we can think on our feet. And then lastly, nice negotiators, they embrace a healthy attitude about the word no, which helps them ultimately get what they need. And what I mean by that is we live in this culture where no is like a dirty word. I'm a mom of two, and I can see how clearly, how it's so interesting how children, really little children, they're programmed to just negotiate, they have a burning desire for that cookie, and they will just go for it, and they'll go round and round and round with you. And over time, we're socialized out of that tendency to go for what we want, to keep problem solving and trying different ways to get what we need. We treat no as a dirty word, and we take it and we shut ourselves down when we hear it. We think maybe there's something wrong with us. We avoid it. We try to come to a win-win, yes agreement, and really no is perfectly fine. In fact, no is the gateway to getting what you need because it opens up the conversation for honesty. If you invite the no and you allow the other party, you can call it out and you say, listen, I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not, and you give them that space to be honest, real solutions can emerge and you may be able to better negotiate. So don't fear no. Don't fear no at all. I always think of, I don't know how many people on this call have seen Clueless, the movie, but Cher gets a B+ or whatever on her report card, and her father says, what is this? And she says, well, it's just a jumping off point for negotiations, and that's what no is. It's just a jumping off point to continue the conversation. You're going to have to go through a few of them. So we want to have a healthy attitude about it. So, 5 myths about negotiation debunked. The first one is that there must always be a win-win. That is absolutely not true. There are many negotiations that are, and we want to find compromise, middle ground, win-win, the midpoint. But there are other negotiations that really aren't win-win. And we have to know that going in, that somebody is going to get what they want and the other person may not get what they want. And that's okay. That sometimes we have to be okay with the fact that if we've explored every avenue or we've really worked through the conversation, sometimes there's winners and losers. I know that sounds harsh to say, but there are certain negotiations that are like that. I'll give you an example. I sent $25 to the birth certificate office to get my daughter her new birth certificate. I didn't get it in the mail. I called. They said, well, you'll have to send me another $25 to get the birth certificate. This is a clear example of a win-lose negotiation, right? There's no win-win here. Either they send me a new one for free, or I send them another $25 for something I didn't receive. So that's where the art of negotiation can really be powerful to help you move through those types of situations. And understanding that can be very helpful. The next myth, that yes is the goal and avoid no at all costs. Again, like we were saying earlier, no is not a dirty word, and we don't want to be so agreeable that we're trying only to hear yeses, because the no's also give us a lot of information that help us to problem solve and move the conversation forward. So a practical way to use this is to really invite this, and we want to say, hey, if this isn't a good idea for you, that's totally fair. What would you like to do next? And see how you're inviting a negative response from them, from the other party. It can be really helpful because either they'll say, yeah, you know, it's not a fit for these reasons, or they'll say, no, it's a fit, and they'll keep moving the conversation forward. But when you allow for the no, it really brings more honesty to the conversation. The next one, you can either be nice or you can negotiate. You can't do both. Well, we've already talked about how being nice and being friendly and warm and empathetic can actually move the conversation forward. It's actually an asset. We have this idea that if you negotiate, you're some sort of jerk or you're pushy, and that's not necessarily the case at all. You can really lead with empathy and friendliness and get to where you need to go. So that's number 4. Number 4, the myth is, if I negotiate, this is kind of a fear that people have, I'll look like a cheapskate, or people think I'm taking advantage of the other person, I'm being rude, I'm being a jerk, and none of that is true. Really, negotiation is just about putting your interests in the forefront and advocating on your own behalf. Everybody has the right to do that. right? Everybody has the right to ask for what they need and try different avenues to get it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing shameful about it. And when we start to look at negotiation more objectively, we can give ourselves permission to do it. And then the final piece to this, the final piece is that simply asking for what you want equals negotiating. So I've talked to hundreds of people over the years about their finances, and one of the funniest things that always comes up when I ask people, how are your negotiating skills? People will say, well, yeah, no, I called American Express and I asked for a lower rate. And I'll say, okay, did they give you the lower rate? Well, no, but I asked, I negotiated. And so this is where the disconnect happens. Simply asking for what you want is great, but negotiation is really what happens after the other party says no. And so when you understand that you're moving into a different part of the conversation, now I'm in a negotiation, they've said no, and I still have to maneuver here, that's when you can truly understand what it is and what it isn't. Negotiation doesn't just mean asking, it means what do they do after you've asked and they've denied your request, and you still have to figure out how to get what you need. So those are the 5, let me catch up on my notes, myths about negotiation that are debunked. And we want to just kind of clear those for you so that we can move forward and feel confident in asking for what we need. So next slide, how to ask for what you want and get it. So first of all, you have to know what you want. So anytime you're going to enter into a conversation where you're going to ask for something and your request can be either accepted or rejected, you want to be very clear before you open that door to that person's office, before you get on the phone, before you write that email, you've got to be crystal clear about what your outcome is. This is called outcome-based thinking. You want to know what you want and what you'll accept, and you want to know it clearly. So many people, they'll call a company, if there's a flub on the bill, they'll call the company and they'll just get really angry. Like, well, you messed up the bill and da-da-da-da-da. And the customer service rep will say, yes, I'm sorry that happened. I'm so sorry that happened for you. That's a shame. And is there anything I can help you with? And the person will say, well, no, and then they just hang up the phone. Venting is not an outcome. We want an outcome, and we want to know exactly what it is that you need. So you want to be prepared and know exactly what that looks like. Is it, a bill, a credit on your account? Is it a specific price? Is it a specific salary? Is it a next meeting? Is it a entrance into an event? Whatever it is, you got to know exactly what that looks like. Next thing we want to do is we want to check for decision-making authority. And again, this is one of those things that seems obvious, but people make this mistake often. I see this. They're asking the wrong person because the person doesn't have authority to give them what it is that they're looking for. Go into the hardware store for milk, for example. So we want to check for decision-making authority. And if that person is the right person and you know what you want and you're very clear, then we can move on to the next step, which we've talked about, which is to embrace no and invite it in. Be the first one to offer up the no. Be the first one to say, hey, it's totally fine if this isn't the right decision for you, or if you're not able to do this for me. I totally understand. And then it invites a conversation that can move you forward. They may be able to help you find the person who can grant your request, or they may be able to find you the department or the phone number or the other party that you need to get what you want. And now they become an ally for you. So you want to embrace no and invite it in. And then the next thing, the final piece to this, I say this all the time. This is so actionable. This is so actionable. You want to write this down. If you're in the middle of one of these negotiation conversations, ask a question. When you get stuck, when you feel a little frazzled, when you're not sure what to do next, you've asked for something, they've said no, and there's this kind of awkward silence, ask a question, literally any question, to invite conversation to flow again so we can get more information out, so we can get to the bottom of things, so we can correctly problem solve. Ask a question. When in doubt, when you're negotiating, ask more questions. So this is the 5-step process that I use to prepare for a negotiation. Again, I'm such a nerd about this, and I truly do. If there's a bill that I have to negotiate, if there is, a vendor that I have to negotiate with, I do my little process. I do my little worksheet, and I keep track of the money that I've earned or saved through this negotiation process because it helps reinforce the habit. This helps so that I don't backslide into being too agreeable and rolling over and letting the other party get their way and all that kind of stuff. So this is literally the 5-step process that I use. And like I said, at the end, you'll have an opportunity to go download one for yourself. First of all, you've got to recognize that you're in a negotiation. This is really funny. Sometimes people don't realize where they are. Again, it's like what we were saying. If you're just asking, you're not negotiating. Asking is what happens after they say no. Now we're kicking. Now we're in a true negotiation, and understanding where you are helps you mentally and emotionally to prepare for it and to say, okay, this is no longer just a friendly chit-chat at this point. I'm trying to advocate for something that I need, and I need to be intentional about how I proceed. I am negotiating now. So that's step 1. 2, you want to get clear on the outcome you want. Right? And you want to write it down. You want to write down exactly what it is that you are looking for. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I had a surgery, and I knew that the surgery had to be completed on a specific date. Otherwise, it was going to, if the surgery was on the specific date or before the end of the year, the surgery would be covered by insurance in its entirety. So there's a lot of money at stake. And if they pushed it off to January, I would have to pay a lot more for the same surgery. So going into my doctor's office, I knew I needed to get a surgery date before the end of the year. And they went back and forth and back and forth. But before going into that conversation, I remember sitting, on the little doctor's chair in the room waiting for him to come in and being very clear about my outcome. I need to have it done before the 31st of December. That's the absolute last. And so it seems, pretty obvious, but you have to go into that negotiation knowing exactly what it is that you are after. So they know that you can communicate it clearly, so they know what's going on. Number 3, you want to make a list of all of the other parties' possible no's, right? So you want to go through and put yourself in their shoes. This is where, if you're a warm-hearted person, if you're a very empathetic person, a nice person, this is where you can use that really as an asset because you can think about what the other party might say. What would they potentially say no to? What could be the potential issues they might have? And you want to make a list and really be creative here. 5 to 10 things that they could say that would say no to your request, to deny what it is that you're looking for. So this is kind of turning that positive thinking on its head, okay? We want to live in the real world where people ask for things and other people say no. So we want to prepare for the no and list out all the different things they could say. Next, after you make a list of all the parties' potential no's, then you want to go back to your list and you want to respond to every single one of them. 5 to 10 no's. You want to come up with 5 to 10 responses to each of. You want a response for each of them, and this is really going to help you prepare for that conversation. What could they say no to? The hardest part about negotiation, in my opinion, is when you get caught off guard. You're just like, bleh, you don't know what to say next to move the conversation forward. And this process, this worksheet, really primes you to give you options to maneuver, to go back and forth. Okay, if they say this, I might come back with this. If they say this, I might ask this question. If they say this, I might offer up this. So you're really preparing for all the possible no's here. And then the last step, so this is step 5, is you want to list out 10 questions. I really want to challenge you. 10 questions that you can ask during the conversation to keep it flowing. Right? So you want to think about all the pieces of information that you don't know and what the other party could offer up, what you could ask them in order to move that conversation forward. This will help you when you get flustered, when you get overwhelmed. ask questions and write those questions down. So how it works, again, in practice is, let's say you have to call, you have to negotiate about something. Before you pick up the phone, you write these 5 things down. 1, am I in a negotiation, yes or no? 2, do I know what I want? Write that down. 3, make a list of all the parties' potential no's. What could they potentially say no to? Write that down. And then list out all of your responses. Write that down. And then finally, what am I going to ask in case the conversation gets stalled? What information am I missing? Write it all down. And I'm telling you, this little piece of paper in your hand is going to really give you the confidence to maneuver despite whatever uncertainty, whatever happens in the call. So like I promised you, some strategies for moving past no. Just get my notes together here. We're almost done. Some strategies for moving past no. We've harped on this. I hope you got the message. It's invite the no. Do not be afraid of no. Prepare for no. Have some responses for no. Let the other party know, hey, it's fine to say no. It's totally cool. And then that will invite real, honest feedback and conversation. So that's the first strategy. The next strategy, make sure you're talking to the decision maker. And what I do, how this looks in theory, how this looks in practice, is if I get stalled out, this is the classic, let me speak to your manager strategy. But this can be used in, not just in retail or when you're talking to a customer service rep. The idea is to ask that other person, if you eventually get stalled out, are you the right person to be asking? Is there somebody else that I could be talking to? Is there another department? Am I in the wrong place? So that's the asking for the decision maker, getting clear that you're talking to the right person. And sometimes that the person you're talking to is the decision maker. And simply by you asking the question, it reminds them that they are the final authority on it. And so there's no other person to work with. So they might as well keep going. Third, details. This is a detail strategy. This is where if you have a price strategy, somebody quotes you a price and you're like, whoa, that's large, that's big, that's more than I was thinking it would be. Again, using questions, you can ask, what's included here? What's included in the price? I recently had somebody come fix my oven, and he quoted me a price. The price was higher than I thought it would be, and I said, the price is higher than I thought it would be. What is included here? And he said, well, it's labor and parts. And I said, so it's just the parts and labor? He said, yes. And then on his own, he came to the realization that there was a lower cost part, comparable but lower cost part that he could offer me, and that saved me $100 right there. So when you have a large price, just ask about the different pieces of it, and that may help you to maneuver and negotiate. 4, this is where your empathetic abilities reign the day. Switch shoes. So I've used this before, my clients have used this before, where when you get stuck in a conversation, in a negotiation, just turn it around and ask them, again, asking a question, if you were me, what do you think I should do here? What would you do here? If you were me, what would be your advice for how this is going? Okay, if you were me, ... And a lot of times that helps the other person to problem solve for you, which can be really powerful. Another strategy, prior situations. If you get stuck, again, asking a question, you ask, how have others handled this? So if you're a customer complaining about something, how have other customers handled this issue? Have there been other customers that have had this issue? How did you work it through with them, for example? And then this is a bonus strategy, problem solving. And this is that mental trick, one of these questions that can really help move you forward. It's, how am I supposed to do that? And it's kind of a cheeky question, and I've seen it used. You can use it in softer ways, but you can certainly ask, if you get stalled in a conversation, a negotiation, and they're asking for something that you're stuck on, you can just ask them, how am I supposed to do that? Again, turning the camera around and helping them put themselves in your shoes to help problem solve and help you get what you want. So those are 5 strategies, 1 bonus strategy for looking at a negotiation in new ways to help you move past those no's when you get stuck. If you notice, these are mostly question-based. The mental tricks that we talked about that I said that I would share with you, the 2 mental tricks that are going to help you in any negotiation. One we've talked about is ask a question, literally any question to move the conversation forward. This will help when you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed. It will help you to recalibrate yourself. It gets the other party talking so your emotions and your brain can catch up. So 1, asking a question, and 2, the other mental trick that is so brilliant, so simple, and so easy to use and really powerful is silence. Being silent. If you're stuck in the middle of a negotiation, you're having these conversations and it's just not going anywhere, use silence. Just shut your mouth. I know, it sounds crazy, but our normal tendencies as human beings are to avoid silence, so the other party will usually fill in the gaps and help to get the conversation quickly on track to avoid that uncomfortable feeling. It creates tension. So if you're challenged or you're stalled or you don't know what to do next, you can actually say nothing, and the other party will jump in probably to move the conversation forward for you. So those are the 2 mental tricks. Ask a question, literally any question, and silence. Those are 2 power moves. So that's the content. I just want to recap for you what we covered. 1, negotiation at its very core. If we want to demystify it, if we want to desensitize ourselves, if we want to take the emotions out of it, it's just about creative problem solving, right? You need something, you're asking the other party if they can give that to you. Maybe they say yes, maybe they say no, but it's about figuring out how to problem solve effectively. And the more you can ask questions, and the more you can invite conversation, and the more you can be empathetic, you can open up a space where creative problem solving can really happen. You can only solve problems by working together with the other party. Nice is an asset here. So it's actually the cornerstone of all of this. Nobody likes negotiating with somebody who's rude, who's pushy, who is not listening, who's not empathetic. You know, the warmer you are, the more you look to relate and connect with the other party, the better your chances are that they will help you to solve your problem. And then negotiation is not really all that scary. Asking questions always brings out the truth. Unless you're talking to like some super advanced shrewd negotiator, most people, when you ask them a question, they will do their best to truthfully give you the answer, and you'll be better equipped to move forward because now they've given you more ammunition to further your goals. And I say this all the time, when the truth comes out, the guards come down. So when people are really talking honestly, then you can really begin to move forward in the conversation confidently. And then it feels less like a negotiation, and again, it feels more like creative problem solving. And all of this is ultimately going to help you move past no's, and that is the key to getting what you want. You're not always going to get what you want, but I do say this just kind of as an aside. The point is not to get what you want all the time in negotiation. The point is to know that after you've left that conversation, that you have done everything you can to advocate for yourself. I think the disappointment sometimes that we feel, or the frustration that we feel when it comes to negotiation, is that in the back of our minds we know that we didn't do all we could to advocate for ourselves. We didn't have the tools. We didn't know what to say. It's that classic, 4 hours later you think, oh, I should have said that. Oh, why didn't I ask that? I got too frazzled. And so this process, this preparation process, will help you to show up powerfully for yourself during any negotiation. And then again, the goal isn't necessarily to get to yes. You will get to yes more often, but it's about showing up for yourself powerfully, more powerfully than you did before. And then, and only then, will you feel more confident in those tense money situations. So, happy negotiating, everybody. You deserve all the good that life has to offer, and negotiation truly is the #1 skill to help you get there, and that is from somebody who avoided it like the plague, let everybody run all over me, and, I've lost countless negotiations, and now learning the strategies, it's really been a huge help in my toolkit to help me move forward in my financial life, and I share these with you. And I hope that you can take at least 1, 2, or 3 of these tools and start using them like today. Like put it into practice today and see what it gets you. And again, my little bribe, a free gift to help you on your way. It's that checklist that we talked about, my nerdy little negotiation spreadsheet or worksheet that I use before every negotiation. And you can just go to my website, www.abundantfinances.com/negotiation gift, and you can download that straight away, and that will be able to that will help you prepare for your next negotiation. And I hope to hear from you, and I hope to know how it goes. Thank you so much again. I'm Jill Davi from AbundantFinances.com. Thank you so much to Savvy Ladies, and I think we're taking questions if possible.
Yes, thank you, Jill. That was great. If you have a question now, you can use the chat box, or you can email info@savvyladies.org. So I see we have some questions that came in during the presentation. The first one is this a good question to keep the conversation flowing in a raise negotiation? Asking, can you expound on reasons for your no?
So let me just make sure I got the question right. If somebody's doing a salary negotiation and then they ask for what they want, and then they come back and they say no, and then is this a good question to ask? Can you expand on your reasons for no?
Yes. Yep.
I think that's the question. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. Can you, again, that's the same strategy of, it's like kind of like what's included in the price. Well, let's break it down. Can you explain what is included and what's not? Can you expand on your reasons for no? I also want to share, because I know salary negotiation is a big hot topic, and I know this wasn't specifically included here, but one of my past clients who works in HR, she gave me this brilliant phrase. It was before you even, it's like at the first interview, kind of, before you're really even deep into the interview process with any position, you're well within your rights to ask what the range is for the position. And you can ask that HR contact or whoever your first contact is what the salary range is. And then armed with that information, then it's not such a surprise at the end. A lot of people go through the interview process and they get, surprise, here's how much we're offering you. But you can start that conversation very early and ask that question right in the beginning so that you can get a sense of what the range is. And then when you ask that question, like she just mentioned, can you give me some reasons why you're not able to meet my request? You have some information, right? Because in the beginning we talked that the range would be, this range, and so what's changed, So I hope that answers the question, at least in broad strokes.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you is, do you have any suggestions when they say they are the decision maker and they're not, but you don't know you don't know who is the right person, and they won't pass you to a supervisor?
No! They're playing hardball. They've played this game before. That means you're talking to a shrewd negotiator, right, on the other side. This is not their first rodeo, and they don't want you to know. That's totally fair. And so I find that, again, asking questions, that they're negotiation. I'm trying to think how I would handle it if they say, you can't really counter and say, oh, come on, I know, da-da-da. But you can, dance around it. Well, how have other people solved this problem? How do you expect, what would be your suggestion to me then in my position? What would be the next course of action, do you think? trying to get them to see, maybe see things from your side. Also, this is a hypothetical situation, but, if you're talking to somebody that's like a customer service rep or something, like remember that there's like a million of them, and sometimes you can just be like, okay, thank you so much, and call back another time, and maybe you'll get a different rep who will be more amenable to you. That's also an option. But yeah, I think, again, trying to, if they're playing hardball with I'm not the decision maker, I can't help you, then okay, then how I still have this issue that's still on the table. How would you suggest that I go about solving this issue that I have if you're not the decision maker, or you are the decision maker or whatever? How would you go about solving that?
Okay, great, thanks. I see we have a few more questions. Do you have time for some more, Jill?
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, great. So this next question for you is asking if, would the same skills prove useful when you are negotiating with a group?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Because I'm trying to think if I've been in a negotiation with a group before. Maybe if she has a little bit more like detail, I could kind of think my way through it.
Okay, I can. I'll check the chat box and let you know.
Yeah, see if she has like a little even if it's like like an industry or something like that. I'm trying to think, like, if we're talking about like union negotiations where there's like bargaining on either side, I'm not as versed in that.
Okay, all right. I'll check if there's any more information, or perhaps an email.
Sure. That's a good question. That's a good one.
Move on to the next one here, which is asking, how can I be a bit firmer yet still nice in the negotiating process?
Yeah, it's funny. How can I be a bit firm? I think your words and your tone, your words can be firm and your tone can still be friendly and soft, if that makes sense. And so, sometimes, and again, this is kind of like, I'm trying to use real examples from real life here, so it's not too much theory, but, sometimes when you're in, a negotiation, it's kind of tense, like, sometimes it is better to just back off for a second, cracking a joke, or just kind of breaking the tension for a second, or saying something that is more personable, or something that kind of brings the tension down. I'll give you an example. We had all my examples have to do with like home ownership, as I'm sure many people can relate. As like, we had a plumber come to the house, and we go through the whole thing, and it turns out that the plumber that I thought was coming was not the same company. It was I had called the wrong company. And so he was about to charge me $500 or whatever it was for to come out, when I thought I was dealing with a different plumber, and it was only supposed to be like $75. And that was a tense, hostile negotiation, right? Because this guy's on my property, he just did the work, but this wasn't what we were agreed to. And so we basically started going round for round, and I remember saying to him at one point, I'm trying to figure out, I'm doing my best here to try to figure out what's going to get you what you'd like, and also make up for the mistake that just happened here. And I think just having that, just interjecting and letting him know, like, I'm trying here to come up with a solution. Like, can we come up with some sort of solution? I think that's how you can bridge being firm and being nice, because how do you, that definitely was the turning point and the softening point in the conversation, where, it was less about, I need to get paid and you need to pay me, and it turned into two people trying to have come to some sort of agreement. And so I think, being firm and being nice, you can do that. With your words, you can be firm. With your tone, you can be a little more soft. And then on top of that, just interjecting things like that remind the other party, hey, we're still people here, okay? And like, I'm just a person, you're just a person, we're just trying to problem solve here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And this is the last question for you, Jill.
Oh, sure.
Do you also feel that it's important to try and determine if it's a won't do versus a can't do? It could be a different approach depending on that.
That's great. Won't do or can't do. You can ask that point blank, I would imagine. Are you not willing to do that? I'm just trying to understand here. That would be like the languaging. I'm just trying to understand here. Is this something that you're unable to do for other reasons, or is something you're unwilling to do? That's a pretty pointed, candid question. It's pretty firm. But if you say it in a pretty soft way, again, you're asking the question that may be able to help you understand better where they're coming from. And again, questions are the only things that are going to get you the information that you need. If you're under the impression that it's something they cannot do, then you'll ask about structural or environmental, constraints. Is this, is it budget season? Is it, you can't do this because your hands tied, or you have a new boss, or whatever it is. And then there's something, then the unwilling, you'll ask questions more about them personally. What is it that you're stuck on? Is there something that's making you uncomfortable? Again, that's the idea of inviting the no. Is this something that you just don't want to do? That's inviting the no, asking the question, and seeing if they're just unwilling to do it. And they may agree with you. It's something I really don't want to do. I don't feel comfortable doing it. Fine. Or they may come back and say, no, I would love to do it. I just can't because X or Y reasons. But you've got to ask the question, and you've got to invite them that emotional honesty. And again, if you're, that nice kind of warm, if you've built a certain level of rapport with the other party, where it feels more like a conversation, where it's a problem-solving thing, they may be more willing to reveal the truth about what's going on. That's an excellent question. They're all excellent questions. I don't want to just point that one out. They're all very good questions.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the questions we had for you, Jill. So I want to thank you again for a really excellent presentation. And I see we had some comments as well, thanking you for all the tips and advice on negotiating. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I can't see the comments. I'd love to. You're very welcome. I'd love to be of service.
And I also want to let everyone know that we will be sending out the link that Jill had for the free gift. So if you didn't have a chance to write it down, you'll be getting an email with that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today and asking some really great questions. We hope you'll be joining us again. And thank you so much, Jill.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.